Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Empowerment Project podcast by Andrea Bosco and Dr. Shar Ray. We are so excited to be here today, and we are going to be talking about a really powerful tool that we use in our programs and in our life, really, um, which are affirmations. We're going to talk about what they mean, what they do with the brain, and one of our favorites, or kind of the one affirmation that kind of sparked our drive into building a school program around this, and why we felt it is such a powerful message and phrase to be saying to ourselves as adults and as children. So let's jump in and talk a little bit about affirmations and what they're actually doing to the brain.
Okay, well, why don't we first talk about the affirmation that we use in the program and specifically why we use this affirmation
Okay.
and how it embodies our entire like the premise of the empowerment project, which is I am in charge of my happiness. And I think that for us was huge when we were building this program because we wanted everybody to know that the way that they feel every day and every moment of their life is a choice, right? We all get
Mhm.
to decide how we want to wake up and show up in the world. And so this particular affirmation, I'm in charge of my happiness, was something that not only hit home for us as adults when we were building the program, but when we started working with the elementary school students, it was huge for them, like them shouting it out, them understanding what that meant, them understanding how nobody in the playground can make them feel a certain way, but they were in charge of how they wanted to feel. Like that was pretty powerful. And I find that that's a really big foundational piece of everything that we do and everything that we embody, again, with the Empowerment Project.
Yeah, exactly. And we chose that word, like, I am in charge of it, because empowerment is really about taking ownership, right? How it starts with us. And that's a huge part of everything we do and talk about, is it starts with you. I remember telling this story in our first few presentations about, even just having my kids come home from school one day when they were little, saying, oh, so and so made me feel bad today. So and so said something, and it upset me. And my first question would be, well, do you believe them? Do you
Hmm.
believe what they said to you is true? And they would say, no, they just said something mean and it's not true. And I said, so you don't have to let that be true
Yeah.
just because they said it. You are in charge. You are in charge. You choose what you want to believe. And if you're going to choose to believe what that person said about you that is mean, then that's your choice. Yes, I agree that, things people say to us can emote emotions. So I'm not here to say, and we're never here about talking about toxic positivity,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that we have to be happy all the time, and everything's got to roll off our back. Trust me. I mean, we just had a conversation about this,
Yeah.
and how we deal with criticism.
Right.
um but it's more about how long are you going to allow those words to sit with you, or are you going to take charge of your happiness and say, no, I'm not going to believe that anymore, because
Mhm.
I believe I am, XYZ, and I'm not
Mhm.
what that person said about me. So, and it's really about taking that ownership, taking that power, taking that charge back,
Mhm. Right.
which is really important.
And I'm glad that you said that. Like it's about taking your power back because that's what happens when you allow someone else to dictate how you feel. You've basically just given them your power, right? Now,
Mhm.
because this person now is dictating the way that you are going to behave through the rest of the day. And it's like that perfect example as adults, we're driving and someone cuts you off, right? And then all of a sudden you're mad for the rest of the day because someone cut you off and they maybe gave you the finger or made you late for work or almost hit your car, whatever it is, right? But you've now given your power away because that's impacted the rest of your day. And I think that's the really big thing that we want everyone to understand when we're talking about this, is that we have choices that show up for us in every moment of the day. And you know what? We may not make the right choice in that moment. However, we also have the opportunity to recalibrate it. It's like GPS, right? Like GPS tells you to go a certain way, but you decide to take an alternate route, and then what happens is GPS recalibrates. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like that, which I think is really cool. But again, when we talk about affirmations and we talk about I am in charge of my happiness, and when we talk about sharing this with adults and children alike, it's not just about saying these words, it's about understanding what's happening to our body physiologically when we engage in like an affirmation practice, right? So it was Louise Hay, right? I know that you've read Louise Hay, right?
Yeah.
One of our favorite books.
You can
um,
heal your life.
you can heal your life. And I mean, I remember picking up that book and going, oh my God, I can heal my life in 30 days, or I can change the way I think in 30 days. And I think this is why I'm so adamant about affirmations and getting people to that 30-day mark. Because when I started affirmations, I believed them initially. And then kind of midway through, I was like, oh my God, this is complete garbage and rubbish. But then I ended up making it to the end of that 30 days with these beautiful affirmations. I'm beautiful, I'm smart, I'm worthy, I'm valued. But it's only because I dove into the science. Like,
Mhm.
I needed to understand, like, I think honestly, Andrew, it was like that moment in my life where I was like, wow, I'm going to be the only person in history that still thinks that I suck after doing affirmations for 30 days.
I'm the only one who
You know the
did.
way my brain works, right? Like it's all about science. So I had to really understand like that whole premise. And I know that it's something that I shared with you too. Like when we started putting this program together, because I know you already had an affirmation practice, but when I shared this information with you, I remember that light bulb going off for you, going, oh my God, I so get it now. Now I understand why I feel the way I feel and the way I did when I started my practice. And basically, when we consider and think about ourselves in a certain way, let's just use a negative idea. So I am clumsy. Okay, let's just say I'm clumsy. If we keep telling ourselves I am clumsy, and we are using that and describing ourselves in a negative connotation. And so what happens is the brain is going to produce matching hormones to support what you're thinking. So in
Mhm.
this case, we'll say a whole bunch of neuropeptides are released in your body to support I am clumsy, right? And so now you're thinking a certain way, you're now feeling a certain way because the body is so smart and it's going to match what you're thinking. It wants to give you what you're thinking. And then now it's going to affect your behavior, right? And you're going to find ways to be more clumsy. And I mean, we can go into even deeper neuroscience where this is concerned. And then it affects everything in the environment or the people around you. And now, in the opposite light, if you decided to say, I am, I am safe, or I am not clumsy, or if you wanted to just change that in a way, in a more positive context, your body is going to start producing different hormones. And these positive hormones are going to make you feel better. And then when you feel better, you do better, and then you affect your environment in a more positive way. So your brain is your brain is always working with you with regards to what you're feeding it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the brain is always looking for proof,
Yes.
right? Based on what you're telling it, right? So if you tell it, I'm worthless or I'm ugly or I'm fat, or, if you want to, if fat is a negative connotation, then your brain will go out and say, okay, good, you're telling me that. I'm going to look for proof. I'm going to constantly assess your environment and constantly prove those words to you so that you can keep thinking them and that you can feel the way you're thinking, right? The brain is very, very intelligent, right, in all ways.
Yeah.
And so it will source out information constantly
Yeah.
to continue to prove those words that you are feeding it.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
what do we say is be careful what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Be aware of what you're putting into the brain. And then you talk about the pathways, the neural pathways and the connections a little bit.
Okay, so what I was going to actually add to what I was originally saying is, when your body is so used to receiving these negative, no, I wouldn't say negative, but these hormones, these neuropeptides that are matching those, let's say, negative thoughts, when you switch to start thinking in a more positive way, and let's use a better example. So maybe not I'm clumsy, but like you said, I'm ugly, I'm not smart, I'm not worthy. When you start saying, I am smart, I'm beautiful, I am loved, I am worthy, your body starts producing new hormones. But the the science and the physiology behind understanding this is that we've actually become addicted to our old thought pattern. So when we start introducing new thought patterns into our thought process, and then our body starts feeling different things, there's it's like chemical warfare in our body.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
it's literally our body is fighting for those old addictive negative thoughts, because that is what it has known its entire life. And when you start putting new thoughts and ideas in a more positive light, your body's actually fighting for more of those neuropeptides, and is fighting the dopamine, the serotonin, the endorphin production that is being formed with these new ideas and new thoughts. And actually, that's where the science took me. So when I started doing these affirmations, I was like, what is going on? Why do I want to stop doing these affirmations after day 10 or day 11? And then when I understood that my body was actually switching up its chemical content, or this hormonal drip that was happening, it helped me understand that if I could get over this hump of the change that was happening in my body, that I'd be able to make it to day 30, feeling good and believing those new ideas. Because, like, again, you asked about the what happens in the brain and the neural pathways. Well, anything that you give attention and focus on is going to grow in your brain. So if your entire life you've given attention and focus to, I am clumsy, I am smart, I'm sorry, I'm clumsy, I'm not smart, I'm ugly, I'm fat, whatever it is that you were saying, then you've created neural pathways in your brain that are reinforcing that. And then it just makes it easier for you to recall, right? So that reinforcement makes those ideas easy to recall. When you start implementing new ideas in your brain, what happens is these old pathways that are no longer being used start breaking apart. And
Mhm.
you're creating new pathways. I'm smart, I'm worthy, I'm valued, I'm beautiful, my body is fit and perfect, I'm strong, whatever it is, whatever those new affirmations are, your brain is creating new neural pathways. And in that process, you know, in that process, like in those moments, it is hard. It is difficult because we don't understand the changes that transition that's happening in our brain and body. But if we can understand that transition and change that's happening in our body and the difficulty it is to get from point A to point B, I think we're more inclined to participate in these tools and techniques like affirmations to get us to the end and into a better place.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it's almost like pulling away from any other addiction, right? Like when you
Right.
go, right? And if anyone's ever had to try to, quit something, whatever, quit smoking, quit drinking, quit whatever, starting a new habit of speaking kindly about yourself is almost like having a withdrawal. Like your brain will be like, what are you doing? Like you used to hate yourself and now you're saying you love yourself? Like, come on, who are you kidding here? Because that network, that pathway, that think of it as like a paved road or grassy pathway that you've walked over and over and over again, and now it's become a dirt road. The grass is completely gone. For the grass to regrow in that area, it's going to take time and it's going to take effort.
Mhm.
And if we even go a little bit deeper into the subconscious brain versus the conscious brain, right? So that subconscious brain is where those belief systems sit,
Mhm.
and the programming and the conditioning that we learned from a young age, right?
Mhm.
That's sitting in that subconscious brain. And it's the subconscious brain that really dictates like 95% of what we do every day
Right.
and how we think. So the conscious brain, the brain in which we have that choice, that free will, that hold on a second, I'm not going to say that about myself anymore. I'm going to switch it. That's the conscious brain, which is really only uh, like alive and well, like 5% of the time. So, yes, we have a lot playing against us, but it's 100% possible to start to move those more positive statements or more self-loving statements about ourselves into the subconscious mind with that practice. But at the beginning, it's going to be tough, right? We're going to have that withdrawal. We're going to fight it just because of how deep and strong those pathways are.
Yeah.
And one of our favorite activities that we do in pretty much all of our presentations, whether it's with adults, whether it's with students, children, is we simply ask them, like before we even start talking about the importance or the benefits of affirmations, we just say, okay, we're going to give you 10 seconds and we want you to think about three things that you love about yourself. Like three things that you just so happy and love about yourself. Go. And we count down from 10 to 10 to 1 and we say, okay, stop. Then we give them, we're like, okay, 10 seconds now to think of three things that you hate about yourself, and go. 10 seconds. And then we ask them, put a finger up, one or two, about which one was easier for you. Was it easier to think of the things you loved about yourself? Put up one finger, or put up two if it was easier for you to think about the things you don't like about yourself. And, 90% of the time, or I would say 100% of the time,
Yeah. I would say
most
100.
people have the number two up, and how
Yeah.
quickly it is for them to recall the things that they hate about themselves.
Mhm.
But you still see a few with the ones up, which is very amazing, which is great. But we say this is the common factor. Most of the time, it is easier for us to recall. And why? Well, because that's where our focus has been for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, whatever it is. And even for teenagers,
Yeah.
15, 16, 17 years, right? This is where the focus has been. And it's quite powerful. Like you see kind of that light bulb go off and like, wow, you
But
know,
you know what's really cool about that, Andrea, and you know this for a fact, depending on the age of the students. So,
mhm.
so what have we always noticed with our elementary school kids?
Yeah, they have great, like it's like they're able to recall things that they love about themselves
Yeah,
quicker for sure.
yeah, way quicker. And then when we get into the teens and the adults, it's always the
Even the
opposite.
preteens, like
Yeah,
even in the sevens and eights, you start to see that jadedness and that,
yeah,
and then another great conversation to have is kind of like, well, why?
yeah,
Why? And listen, like this is when we started this company and program, it was to answer those whys, right?
yeah.
Like why does our brain work that way and why does that happen? And yeah, like why is it? Why is it that it's not more easily accepted to be confident in who we are and to love ourselves? Like what messages are out there, whether it's from our parents, whether it's from society and media, it's
Hmm.
like I find that a lot of the messaging is around dimming your light and not being egotistical and not you know, over, boasting about yourself, and that there's this like confusing information around having self-love is being conceited or,
Yeah.
better than other people. And, we even had a kid say, well, we don't want to be a narcissist.
Hmm.
Well, no, completely different, right? Like
Hmm.
narcissism, egotistical is a completely different characteristic than loving yourself.
Hmm.
You can say, I am beautiful,
Hmm.
and it means that I am beautiful, but so are you, and so are you, and so are you. If you're saying it, I'm the most beautiful person in the world and everyone else is beneath me, that's a different energy, right? That's a different vibration. And so explaining that to people and understanding that it's a completely different thing. And yes, we all know some of those maybe egotistical, narcissistic people, but believe it or not, when you look quite deep down into who those people are, they are quite insecure, and that they use that sort of over boasting and that ego to make them feel better. Right. And
Hmm.
and yeah, I could be generalizing, and there are obviously exceptions to this rule, but when you meet someone and you really see that beauty and confidence, and they know who they are, and they just feel so confident in their own skin, that's a completely different feeling. It's and they raise others up with them in that
Hmm.
spirit.
Hmm.
It is such a different thing than being an egomaniac, right?
Right. Yeah,
So
and I think one of the hardest things when we're teaching the younger, when we're teaching students, I would just say students in general,
mhm,
is that a lot of them have parents that don't believe that they're worthy of loving themselves. And
right.
the big I think that's the big disconnect, right? So I think the beautiful thing about what you and I are trying to do, and we talk about affirmations, I mean, it's not something that we only share with the students. We share this with parents too, and we do parent programs. And the
Mhm,
reason for that is because we want to bridge that gap. We want to be able to build up or rebuild, I would say, these adult foundations so that they can, uplift their children,
yeah.
right, and help them support their foundations, because you're right, we see that all the time. We see that disconnect between parents and kids, and what how the parents feel and how the children feel. And again, that bridging that gap is so important for us. And affirmations is probably one of the easiest tools to start with, and the easiest tool to continue with, if you understand the science. Like, if you
Mhm,
understand that, like, I know it was a game changer for me. Like, everything in my world changed when I understood the science behind affirmations and what my brain was changing. It was
mhm,
it was incredible. And then I felt like I was even able to share it with my kids, but then also answer those why questions. Like, well, why? Why do I have to do this? Well, this is why. This is what's happening to your brain. And this is why it makes you feel good. And it's just such a beautiful way to engage people and build that beautiful foundation of self-love.
mhm. And again, it's a choice, right? It's a conscious
Mhm.
choice, and I know we're saying, it's taken many years of thinking one way, and that don't think that it's going to take that many more years to
Mhm.
switch to shift, because it doesn't. It actually, like Shar said, it took 30 days for her to start to shift. And like any practice, you need to work at it,
Yeah.
right? And you need to be consciously aware. And listen, we're not perfect.
Mhm.
We say not so positive things about ourselves all the time, or even just not so positive phrases, and whatever it is. But what I do notice that I am so much better at is being conscious of the words that I say,
Yeah.
right? And
Catching yourself.
catching myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
catching myself and being like, why am I saying that? Like I shared this the other day in our session, is that one of the phrases that I keep finding myself saying or thinking is this whole notion of life is short, and you
Mhm.
hear it all the time. Life is short. Enjoy your kids when they're young because life is short. Or, you hear someone unfortunately get ill and, oh, life is short. Make sure, you know, this and that. And it's this whole, and for me, I'm choosing to shift that phrase into
Yeah.
something that is in my mind like more of it's a lower vibration. I'm not saying it's a negative thing to say, it's just lower.
Mhm.
And I'm really trying to elevate the vibration of my words. So instead of life is short, I'm starting to say life is as long as it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
And I am enjoying as every day as much as I can. I am being present, I am being grateful, and I am taking it all as it comes. And life is as long as it should be. And so, and listen, I still find myself thinking it and saying it, right? And it's even just like a passing phrase that we say with our friends, right? Oh yeah, life is short, whatever. But so because again, what's my brain going to do when when I keep saying life is short, it is going to start finding proof for me to believe that phrase that life is short. I'm going to hear more about illnesses and deaths. I'm going to see more negativity on the news about young people, potentially getting ill and passing away, whatever. My brain is going to start creating that proof to confirm that statement that life is short, right? It's just
Yeah.
how the brain works. It's the science.
Mhm.
So being conscious, and we ask you all that are listening or watching this, what are some of those phrases that you continue to say to yourself that you hear
Mhm.
that maybe you can start to shift and just use new language? Language is such a huge part, right, of what's sitting in those thoughts. So how can you start to change your language?
Yeah. It's all connected, right? I even heard someone say one day that your tongue is like a wand. And like,
Ooh.
right? Isn't that interesting? Like your tongue is a wand. And so whatever you're saying, it's like you're willing it to happen. So,
Mhm.
anyways, I just thought that was a very interesting way of looking at it
Yeah.
because, again, everything, it's not just what we're thinking or what we're feeling or the way we're behaving. It's about what we're saying as well, right? What we say to ourselves out loud or in our head, what we say to others, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because again, you're right. Words have every single word in the entire English language actually has a frequency attached to it. And
Mhm.
I always use the example of love and hate. They're two four-letter words and they both end with the letter E, but when you say hate versus love, there's a completely different feel to
Mhm.
those words. So
Mhm.
and that frequency, that vibration is so important. And again, choosing your words wisely, choosing your thoughts wisely. Be careful what
Ex-
you think about.
Exactly. And for all our parents out there, our kids are listening to us all the time. I mean, we learned our language from our parents. And
Hmm.
we're not here to shame or blame or, try to whatever, go in the past and wish we can change the past because that's done. It's fine. And our parents did the best they could with the information and knowledge and resources that they have. But now that, you know, we're in a time where, knowledge is literally at our fingertips, we have more choice, right? And you can be more aware of what are you saying on a regular basis, right? Because our kids are absorbing all of that. They're absorbing all of what we say to ourselves, what we say to them, even what they overhear. It's so funny. Like I can call my kids 10 times for dinner and
Hmm.
they won't hear me or they pretend they don't hear me. But I'll whisper something to my husband about, maybe obviously something I don't want them to hear. And they'll be like, "What? Really? Is that what that person said? Or is that what's happening?" And I'm like, "But you guys don't even listen to me when I try calling you for dinner." So they are always listening,
Hmm.
right? and they are always in tune of the words you're using, the energy you're putting out there. So pay attention. Pay attention. They are absorbing that. And it's okay to say something and then take it back and say, you know what? No, I'm not going to say that. I shouldn't have said that. I'm rephrasing that and I'm saying this,
Yeah.
right? So it's really important. Um, so how can we do all this, right? So in our research and in our information is that the brain is influenced the most by what it sees and what it hears. So
Yeah.
if we have five senses, the two, hearing and seeing, are the most effective on the brain, 84%. Okay. And then the rest of the senses come into play. So what we see and what we hear all the time is what's really formulating those thought patterns, that programming. So what do? Right? So you start writing down things that you want, new language, writing down affirmations as often as you can, and then reading them out loud so that your brain can hear it. Even if you want to record it on your iPhone, put in your earbuds and listen to yourself saying these words over and over again. It doesn't have to be long, it could be 10 seconds, it could be 30 seconds, right? But reading, writing them, and hearing them will start to shift your thoughts. And
Yeah.
then, if you want to go even deeper, which I know is challenging for most, and it's even something I've struggled with, is doing mirror work, saying them to yourself in the mirror. Shar, you did this.
Oh my God. And I remember the first time I did it and I looked in the mirror and I said, I love you. I
Um,
couldn't even look at myself. Like I could not look at myself in the mirror and tell myself that I love me. It
right.
was so hard. It was so hard. And when I've gotten patients to start affirmations, you know, they've come back and they're like, "Oh, well, I went in the mirror, I looked in front of the mirror and I said, 'You are beautiful.'" And I said, "Okay." Instead of saying, I'm so glad that you were able to do that, but instead of saying you are beautiful, I want you to look in the mirror and say, I am beautiful. And just saying I versus you, I remember this very particular patient who I'd been working with to help build up some of her confidence and self-worth and everything. Her eyes just filled with tears because the thought of actually looking in the mirror and telling herself that I love you and that I am beautiful, uh it was it was not even something that she could fathom. Like it was
Mhm.
anyways, but eventually we did get there. I told her we needed to change language a little bit. Instead of saying you, say I, and see how
Yeah.
that feels. And just again, frequency, right? Those
Yeah.
words and how they hit home. It's a little different.
Yeah. And even the next word after I, right? Like, so we try to say, keep it present. So
Mhm.
I am,
Right.
I have, I create, I believe. So in the present, a lot of times we could say stuff like, I will. Like, I
Mhm.
will believe in myself. Like, the word
Right.
will is sort of
Yeah.
like, it's going to happen later on. It's not
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
Or I could, or I
Mhm.
should.
Mhm.
Um, so staying present, even I am working on,
Mhm.
is a good one, right?
Mhm.
Instead of, because yeah, I know it's tough to go from I'm dumb to I'm smart, right?
Mhm.
I am working on studying more to get smarter or whatever it is, right?
Right.
So that
Right.
I am working on
Mhm.
peace, or I'm working on loving myself.
Mhm.
If it's hard for you to say I love you,
Mhm.
I am working on loving myself.
Right. It has to be believable for you. And
Yeah.
whatever that point is, or whatever choice of affirmations you're using, it needs to be believable for you.
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that was actually one of my first affirmations when it was, I am working on loving myself. So I couldn't say I love you, but I said I'm working on loving me. I am working on loving me. Like that was what I was working on. So, and whatever that meant and whatever that meant I went through or whatever, but it was such a great starting point. Like now today I can say I love myself. I truly love myself because I feel like I've done a lot of uh work to get to this point, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
the thing
yeah,
is, like, ultimately, when you say, I love myself now because I've done the work, but that love for yourself was always there, right?
yeah,
It's more like you believe in the love you have for yourself now
mhm,
more
yeah,
than you did before because of this work. But everybody has that love. It's there. It's from our creator. It is in us from birth, from preconception. It's
yeah,
there,
that's true. Yeah, very
right?
true.
So it's more about like believing it,
Hmm.
because it's not like you just all of a sudden
Hmm.
didn't have it and now you do. It's
Right.
always there.
Yeah. I had to
And
dig it up.
dig it up. Yeah. That's it.
I had to dig it up.
Be
Instead
dug.
of the archives.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, like changing your language, finding new words, new phrases. There's tons of YouTube videos that literally like just Google positive affirmations, and you can listen to them, find someone's voice that you like and put that, or like I said before, record your own voice. That's even more
Mhm.
powerful because it's
Yeah,
your voice
yeah.
and you're hearing that. Using resources like affirmation cards. And yes, the Empowerment Project has created our own affirmation deck called Mindful Affirmation Cards. And
Mm-hmm.
there's 43 beautifully crafted affirmation cards. Um, it started with this. It started with I am in charge of my happiness.
Hmm.
And then on the back we just give a little bit more information. So happiness is a choice. Remember that you are in charge of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. What are you choosing today? And
Hmm.
so reading something like this on a daily basis, putting it in the card holder that it comes with. And there's lots of these things out there. Even Louise Hay created
Yeah.
decks in her time. And that's what I started using. I started using the Hayes decks and reading them out. And usually, the words that you read in that day or the card that you pick that day tends to be what you need to hear, right?
Hmm.
It's not coincidence. It's just meant to be. And even when I use them in classes or we use them with students, we ask them pick a card, write it down. What does it mean to you? And most of them will say, yeah, this is something I needed to work on today. This is something
Yeah.
that was meant to be heard. So
It's
that's
funny
really
how that
beautiful.
happens, right? It's funny how it
Yeah.
just shows up magically
Right?
for you. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So, but again, it comes down to that choice, right? It
Hmm.
comes down to believing that I am in charge of my happiness. I am in
Hmm.
charge of my thoughts, my feelings, my actions, and making that conscious choice. And
Hmm.
I know it's tough. We know we've been there.
Yeah,
We're not saying this because we've came out these beautiful self-loving people from the get-go, but it is possible. It
yeah,
is possible, and it just takes that little shift, but it's absolutely possible.
yeah. I always say if I can do it, anybody can do it. Right?
Yeah,
I was that lost cause. At least I thought I was, right?
at least you thought you were.
Exactly.
Exactly. So thank you all for listening to this discussion. We hope to do a lot more of them. And we hope it has left you with some new knowledge, some new belief, some new conscious thought, whatever it is. Uh, and we hope you have a great day.
Yeah. If
Thank
you
you for
have any
listening.
questions or comments, make sure to leave them. And thank you for listening, everyone.
Bye for now.